The massive chamber of the Galactic High Court towered above James Anderson. Crystal pillars stretched toward a ceiling that sparkled like a star-filled night sky. He stood alone on the defendant's platform, a circular stage that hovered in the center of the room, facing the Council of Seven. The council members sat behind their curved white desk, each one representing the most advanced species in the galaxy. Their bodies varied from crystalline structures to gaseous forms contained in environmental suits, but their eyes, or whatever sensory organs they possessed, all focused on the single human before them. James Anderson of Earth, the Chief Justice, spoke, its translator converting its harmonic tones into standard galactic basic. You stand accused of causing the death of Lord Vex of the Luminan Empire during the diplomatic summit on Station K-12. How do you plead? James straightened his back, fighting against the urge to slouch under their intense scrutiny. Not guilty, Your Honors. Lord Vex's death was a tragic accident. Murmurs rippled through the observation galleries where hundreds of alien spectators watched. This was the biggest trial of the year, the first human to be tried in the Galactic High Courts since Earth joined the galactic community just 5 years ago. The Chief Justice's crystalline form shimmed with blue light. The evidence suggests otherwise. Security footage shows you pushing Lord Vex during your argument. I gestured while speaking, James explained, keeping his voice steady. On Earth, it's a normal part of communication. I didn't know his species was so physically fragile. I barely touched him. Ignorance of xenophysiology is no excuse, another council member rasped, its gaseous form swirling with angry red patterns. Lord Vex's crystalline matrix shattered from the impact. A diplomatic representative should know better. James felt sweat trickle down his back. The environmental controls in the chamber were set to accommodate all species, making it uncomfortably warm for humans. I requested training on alien physiologies before the summit, but was told there wasn't enough time. We're still new to the galactic community. Yes, the Chief Justice said, perhaps too new. This incident has made many question humanity's readiness for galactic civilization. The council members turned to each other, communicating in ways James couldn't perceive. After a few tense moments, they faced him again. We have reviewed all evidence and reached our verdict, the Chief Justice announced. James Anderson, this council finds you guilty of causing death through criminal negligence. James's heart sank. Your Honors, please. Silence, a third council member commanded, its energy form flickering. Traditional imprisonment would be inappropriate, given your species' unique biological requirements. Therefore, we sentence you to exile on Nexus 9. The observation galleries erupted in shocked whispers. Even the guards behind James shifted uncomfortably. Nexus 9? James asked, his mouth dry. He had heard rumors about that planet during his time in space. None of them were good. A Category 5 Deathworld, the Chief Justice explained, almost seeming to take pleasure in the details. Gravity at 1.8 standard, atmospheric pressure 3 times galactic norm, high radiation levels, and an ecosystem filled with apex predators. No sentient species has survived there for more than one planetary rotation. James felt his legs weaken, but he forced himself to stand tall. Earth was considered a Category 3 Deathworld by galactic standards, but Nexus 9 was in another league entirely. The sentence will be carried out immediately, the Chief Justice declared. You will be transported to Nexus 9 with basic survival gear. May whatever deities you believe in have mercy on your soul. As the guards moved to escort him away, James caught sight of Lord Vex's family representatives. They sat in the front row, their crystalline forms gleaming with satisfaction. But something in their posture, the way they clustered together and avoided looking directly at him, sparked a doubt in his mind. Was there more to this than a simple diplomatic accident? Before he could pursue that thought, the guards guided him toward the exit. The last thing he heard was the Chief Justice's voice. Court is adjourned. Let the record show that justice has been served. James had a feeling that justice was the last thing being served in that courtroom today. The prison transport ship cut through space like a dark arrow. Inside, James sat in his holding cell, watching the stars streak by through a small reinforced window. The cell was designed for multiple species, with strange attachments and environmental controls he could only guess at. For him, it was uncomfortably cold. Keeper Mar, his guard during the 3-day journey to Nexus 9, approached the energy barrier. Unlike most aliens James had met, Mar looked almost human-like, except for his blue-tinted skin and 4 arms. His species, the Ardens, were known as the galaxy's best prison keepers. "Mealtime, human," Mar said, sliding a tray through the barrier's food slot. "Though I don't know why we bother. No one survives Nexus 9. James picked up what looked like colored cubes. "You've had other prisoners sent there." "7 in my career," Mar replied, leaning against the wall. "The longest lasted 20 hours. Poor soul thought he could hide in a cave. The cave ate him." James paused with a food cube halfway to his mouth. "The cave ate him." "Nexus 9 has predatory everything," Mar explained, all 4 hands moving in explanation. "Plants, rocks, even some clouds are alive and hungry. It's why the Council uses it for executions they want to look like exile." "Execution." James set down his food. "So they're not even pretending it's a survival chance." Mar's expression softened slightly. "Look, I've been doing this job for 30 cycles. I can tell when someone's been set up. That business with Lord Vex. Too clean, too convenient." James moved closer to the barrier. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. You're the first human diplomat. Lord Vex was known for opposing Earth's membership in the galactic community. One little push, and suddenly he's dead. His species is fragile, yes, but not that fragile." A cold feeling spread through James's chest. "You think it was planned?" "I think," Mar said carefully, lowering his voice, "that Lord Vex had enemies who saw an opportunity. Humans are new, unknown, easy to blame." James remembered the way Lord Vex's family had avoided looking at him during the trial. Their guilty postures made more sense now. Mar checked his wrist computer. "We have 2 days until we reach Nexus 9. Against regulations, but..." He hesitated, then continued. "I could share some information about the planet. Might help you last longer than 20 hours, at least." "Why would you help me?" "Because in 30 cycles, you're the first prisoner who didn't cry, beg, or try to bribe me," Mar said with a slight smile. "Besides, I hate political games. If you're going to die, you deserve to know why and have a fighting chance." Over the next hours, Mar shared everything he knew about Nexus 9. The planet's crushing gravity, its toxic storms, the predators that hunted in packs. But most valuable was the information about the few survivors who had lasted more than a few hours. "There's a valley," Mar explained, showing James a rough map on his computer. "The gravity's slightly weaker there. Most who found it lived an extra day. And the northern caves, the non-carnivorous ones, sometimes have water you can filter." James memorized every detail, though part of him wondered if it was pointless. Even Earth's worst environments seemed mild compared to what awaited him. As the ship entered its night cycle, Mar prepared to leave. "One more thing," he said, reaching into his uniform. He pulled out a small data chip. "Not much, but it has basic survival information and some maps. Against regulations, of course." "Of course," James said, carefully taking the chip. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Mar replied quietly. "Just try to survive. It would be nice to finally see someone beat their game." As James lay in his cell that night, watching the unfamiliar stars, he thought about Mar's words. Someone had wanted him dead, had orchestrated this elaborate execution. They thought sending him to Nexus 9 would be the end of him. But they had forgotten one thing. Humans came from a world that the galaxy called a Deathworld. Perhaps that meant something after all. The drop pod broke through Nexus 9's thick orange clouds, shaking violently. James gripped his harness, watching through the small viewport as the alien landscape rushed up to meet him. The planet looked like someone had mixed Earth's worst environments into one deadly package. The landing was rough. When the pod's door hissed open, the first thing that hit James was the heat, like opening an oven door. The second was the gravity, pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. His legs shook as he stepped onto the red-orange soil. Atmospheric pressure stabilized. Outer seal secure, his suit's computer announced. Warning, extreme conditions detected. Estimated suit integrity, 48 hours. James looked around, remembering Mars' advice. The valley with lower gravity should be to the north. But first, he needed to understand what he was dealing with. The landscape stretched out before him like a nightmare version of the Australian outback. Red rocks jutted from the ground at odd angles, their surfaces gleaming with some kind of oil-like substance. The plants, if you could call them that, were mostly black and moved even without wind. In the distance, something big flew through the orange sky, its wingspan wider than any Earth bird he'd ever seen. "Let's see what we're working with," James muttered, checking his survival gear. The council had given him the bare minimum: a basic environment suit, some water tablets, a multi-tool, and an emergency beacon he knew wouldn't work. They really had expected him to die quickly. A screech from behind made him turn. A creature about the size of a large dog was watching him from behind a rock. It had too many legs and what looked like multiple mouths along its sides. James remembered Mars' warning about pack hunters. Where there was one, there would be more. He started walking north, keeping his pace steady despite the crushing gravity. His military training kicked in: assess threats, find shelter, secure water, establish a base. The fact that everything on this planet could kill him was just another challenge to overcome. The creature followed him, keeping its distance. Soon, James heard more movements. The pack was gathering. "Just like dingoes," he said to himself, thinking of his time training in the Australian outback. "They're testing me." The gravity was making every step a challenge, but James noticed something interesting. While it was definitely stronger than Earth's, it wasn't as devastating as the Council had claimed. His bones weren't breaking, his organs weren't failing. It was like carrying a heavy backpack. Uncomfortable, but manageable. A sound like rolling thunder made him look up. The orange clouds were darkening, swirling ominously. Acid rain, he remembered Mars saying. Find shelter fast. The pack of creatures was getting bolder. James counted at least 6 now, moving in a classic predator pattern. They were herding him away from his intended path, toward what looked like a field of those black moving plants. James smiled grimly. They were smart, but they didn't know humans. He picked up a rock, testing its weight. The creatures watched curiously. With the enhanced gravity, this would either work perfectly or get him killed. James hurled the rock with all his strength at the nearest creature. It struck with far more force than the aliens probably expected, sending the predator tumbling backward with a surprised shriek. The others froze, not used to prey that fought back. Taking advantage of their confusion, James sprinted forward, as much as one could sprint in this gravity. The pack scattered, their hunting pattern disrupted. Through his suit, he felt the first drops of rain beginning to fall. The drops sizzled where they hit the ground. Ahead, he spotted what looked like a cave entrance, one of the non-carnivorous ones, he hoped. As James reached the cave, he turned to see the pack regrouping, but staying well back. The acid rain was falling heavily now, forcing them to seek their own shelter. Inside the cave, James checked his suit for damage and caught his breath. He was alive, he had shelter, and he'd already learned 2 valuable things. The gravity wasn't as bad as advertised, and the local predators could be intimidated. "Not bad for my first hour on a Category 5 Deathworld," he said to the empty cave. "Let's see what else you've got." 2 weeks had passed since James's arrival on Nexus 9. His environment suit had failed on day 3, but by then he'd already figured out something remarkable. He could breathe the air. It burned his lungs a little, but it wasn't the instant death the council had predicted. Inside his cave dwelling, James marked another day on the wall using charcoal from his fires. He turned the natural cave into something resembling a home, with separate areas for sleeping, food storage, and what he called his workshop, a place where he experimented with the planet's resources. Note to self, he said, recording on Mars' data chip which still worked. Local water becomes drinkable if you filter it through the purple stone layers. Tastes terrible, but I'm still alive. Also, those crystalline formations in the cave walls give off heat, useful for the cold nights. A noise from outside made him grab his spear, a weapon he'd crafted from one of the harder local woods, and a sharp piece of that same purple stone. One of the pack creatures that had chased him on day one stood at the cave entrance. They'd been watching him for days. Back again? James asked. He'd started calling them hyenas due to their hunting style. Still trying to figure me out. The creature tilted its head, multiple eyes blinking. Over the past weeks, James had noticed they were curious about him. They'd watched him hunt, build fires, and create tools. Sometimes they even brought him dead prey, though whether as a gift or a threat, he wasn't sure. James tossed a piece of meat toward the creature. It sniffed it cautiously before eating. See, we can be friends, or at least not enemies. His body had changed over the past 2 weeks. The higher gravity had been brutal at first, but now he felt stronger than ever. His muscles had adapted, becoming denser. Even his bones felt heavier. The constant physical demands of survival had transformed him. James checked his food stores. Dried meat from something that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear, edible roots he tested carefully, and water filtered through his purple stone system. He'd learned which local plants were poisonous through careful observation of what the native animals ate. The council really didn't understand humans, he muttered, preparing his hunting gear. We evolved dealing with exactly this kind of challenge. Outside, the orange sky was clearing after another acid rainstorm. James had learned to predict them by watching the cloud patterns. He'd also discovered that the rain, while dangerous, created pools of water that attracted prey animals. As he prepared to leave the cave, he noticed something new. 3 of the hyenas were waiting outside, but not in their usual hunting formation. They seemed expectant. Want to hunt together? James asked, amused. He'd seen them take down prey before. They were efficient hunters. Maybe they'd recognized him as another predator rather than prey. The creatures moved ahead of him, leading the way toward a valley he hadn't explored yet. James followed cautiously, spear ready. After 15 minutes of walking, they stopped at a ridge. Below, a herd of massive creatures grazed on the black moving plants. They looked like armored elephants, with thick plates covering their bodies. James had seen one before, but hadn't dared to hunt something so large alone. Ah, he said, understanding. You need help with the big ones. Smart. The hyenas watched him, waiting. James studied the herd, noting their patterns, the direction of the wind, and possible escape routes. On Earth, early humans had hunted in groups with other predators, wolves becoming dogs, for example. Well, James said, readying his spear and checking that his stone knife was secure, let's show this planet what cooperative hunting looks like. As he moved into position with his unlikely hunting partners, James couldn't help but smile. The council had sent him here to die, but instead he was thriving. They'd forgotten that humans were apex predators on their own Deathworld, perfectly evolved to adapt and survive. And he was just getting started. The monitoring station orbiting Nexus 9 was usually the most boring post in the galaxy. Officer Lynn of the Galactic Survey Corps sat at her desk, watching routine scans of the planet's surface. No one survived on Nexus 9, so her job was simply to confirm deaths for official records. Another day, another scan, she muttered, starting the daily surface sweep. The computer beeped, highlighting something unusual. That's strange. She zoomed in on the area. The scan showed signs of organized activity. A cleared area near a cave, what looked like drying racks for food. And was that smoke from a fire? Computer, show me drone footage of Sector 7, Lynn commanded. The screen filled with live video feed from a surveillance drone. What she saw made her drop her cup of warm drink. A human, the condemned prisoner from 3 months ago, was not only alive but hunting alongside a pack of dreaded spine stalkers, the most dangerous pack predators on Nexus 9. As she watched, the human took down a massive armored grazer with a handmade spear, working in perfect coordination with the alien predators. "This is impossible," Lynn whispered. She quickly sent the footage to Galactic Central Command. Within hours, the quiet monitoring station became the center of a storm. Scientists, military officials, and council representatives flooded in, all demanding to see the footage. 3 months. Professor Xan, a leading xenobiologist, exclaimed. He's survived 3 months in conditions that kill most species in hours. Look at his movements. He's adapted to the gravity. The footage showed James climbing cliffs that would crush most beings, drinking water that should have dissolved his internal organs, and breathing air that was classified as toxic to all known life forms. Not just surviving, another scientist noted, but thriving. He's built tools, established a territory, and even formed a symbiotic relationship with local apex predators. This changes everything we thought we knew about human capabilities. In the council chambers, the footage caused an uproar. The Chief Justice watched in stunned silence as James demonstrated complete adaptation to what they had considered a death sentence. How is this possible? One council member demanded. Their world is only Category 3. Perhaps, a senior scientist suggested, we need to reevaluate our classification system. We based it on our own standards of what makes a world hostile. But humans, they evolved in conditions we never considered survivable. Meanwhile, back at the monitoring station, Lynn continued watching James through the drone feeds. She saw him teaching the spine stalkers to herd prey more efficiently, using fire to cook meat, and creating increasingly sophisticated tools. He's not just surviving, she realized. He's building a civilization. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Footage of the human thriving on Nexus 9 played on every information network. Scientists began reviewing everything they knew about human physiology. Their bones get stronger under pressure instead of breaking, one report noted. Their muscles adapt to increased gravity. They can process toxins that would kill most species. Even their brains seem to thrive on challenge and adversity. In a secure meeting room, Lord Vex's family members watched the footage with growing alarm. Their carefully planned political assassination had backfired spectacularly. If he survives, one whispered, if he returns, the truth might come out. But it was too late. The council had already launched an investigation into James's original trial. Too many questions had been raised. Why had a species capable of surviving Nexus 9 been so easily blamed for accidentally killing someone? Why had the normal diplomatic training been skipped? Officer Lynn sent one final drone to observe James before the recovery mission was launched. The footage showed him sitting by a fire at night, surrounded by his spine stalker pack, looking up at the stars. He didn't look like a prisoner or a victim. He looked like exactly what he was, a human who had turned survival into mastery, adaptation into triumph. The galaxy would never view humanity the same way again. The grand archives of the Galactic Council hummed with activity. Detective Thax, known for solving the galaxy's most complex cases, moved his hover chair through stacks of data crystals. His species had evolved without legs, but their minds were sharper than most computers. Show me everything from the day of Lord Vex's death, he commanded. The archives projected a holographic display of Station K-12's security footage. Interesting, Thax muttered, his sensory tentacles twitching. Replay the 10 minutes before the incident. The footage showed James and Lord Vex talking. Their body language seemed calm, friendly even. Then Lord Vex's assistant entered the room, whispered something, and left. Moments later, the fatal accident occurred. Pause there, Fax ordered. Enhance the assistant's face. The image zoomed in, showing subtle signs of stress that most would miss. But Fax's species could read micro-expressions across all known races. The assistant knew, he concluded. Computer, track all communications from Lord Vex's staff that day. A new hologram appeared, showing a web of messages. One caught Fax's attention, a large data transfer to an anonymous account just hours before the incident. In another part of the galaxy, Keeper Mar received an urgent message. The Council needed his testimony about James's journey to Nexus 9. As he prepared to leave his post, he smiled, remembering the data chip he'd given James. What no one knew was that it contained more than just survival information. It had been recording everything James experienced. Back in the Council chambers, Lord Vex's family faced questioning. Their crystalline forms vibrated with nervous energy as Thax presented his findings. Lord Vex was planning to support Earth's full membership in the Galactic Alliance. Thax announced, "Our investigation found drafts of a speech he would have given the next day. A speech that would have greatly increased human influence in galactic politics." The family members' crystals chimed in discord. "That's impossible," one protested. He opposed human involvement in galactic affairs. Publicly, yes, Thax agreed. But privately, he had discovered something that changed his mind. He projected another document. His personal research showed that humans might be the key to colonizing Category 4 and 5 worlds. Worlds that hold resources our civilization desperately needs. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Thax continued, his hover chair moving closer to the family representatives. "You couldn't let that happen," he said. "Your mining monopoly on marginally habitable worlds would have ended. So you arranged an accident, blamed it on human ignorance of your species' fragility. But you made one critical mistake." "What mistake?" a family member asked, their crystal structure nearly transparent with fear. "You chose Nexus 9 as his punishment," Thax replied. "A world so deadly it would ensure no one questioned your story. Instead, it proved everything Lord Vex had discovered about humans. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, secret messages, and finally, a confession from Lord Vex's assistant. The truth emerged like a star-going supernova. Impossible to hide, impossible to deny." Meanwhile, on Nexus 9, James was teaching his spine stalker pack a new hunting technique when he saw something in the orange sky. A ship breaking through the clouds. Not a drone this time, but a real rescue vessel. As the ship landed, James stood his ground, his pack arranged protectively around him. The ship's door opened, and to his surprise, Keeper Mar stepped out, wearing a heavy environment suit. "You lasted more than 20 hours, Mar called out, his voice filled with pride. "In fact, you've lasted longer than anyone in galactic history." "The truth?" James asked simply. Mar nodded. "Found. All of it. The Council is waiting to apologize, and to learn. It seems humans have much to teach us about survival." James looked at his pack, his cave home. The world that was supposed to kill him. "We'll teach you," he said. "But first, there are some people I need to face." The story of his survival had shattered more than just survival records. It had shattered the galaxy's understanding of what was possible and what humans could truly achieve. The Grand Archives of the Galactic Council hummed with activity. Detective Fax, known for solving the galaxy's most complex cases, moved his hover chair through stacks of data crystals. His species had evolved without legs, but their minds were sharper than most computers. "Show me everything from the day of Lord Vex's death," he commanded. The archives projected a holographic display of Station K-12's security footage. "Interesting," Fax muttered, his sensory tentacles twitching. "Replay the 10 minutes before the incident." The footage showed James and Lord Vex talking. Their body language seemed calm, friendly even. Then Lord Vex's assistant entered the room, whispered something, and left. Moments later, the fatal accident occurred. "Pause there," Fax ordered. enhanced the assistant's face. The image zoomed in, showing subtle signs of stress that most would miss. But Thax's species could read micro-expressions across all known races. The assistant knew, he concluded. Computer, track all communications from Lord Vex's staff that day. A new hologram appeared, showing a web of messages. One caught Thax's attention. A large data transfer to an anonymous account just hours before the incident. In another part of the galaxy, Keeper Mar received an urgent message. The Council needed his testimony about James's journey to Nexus 9. As he prepared to leave his post, he smiled, remembering the data chip he'd given James. What no one knew was that it contained more than just survival information. It had been recording everything James experienced. Back in the Council chambers, Lord Vex's family faced questioning. Their crystalline forms vibrated with nervous energy as Thax presented his findings. Lord Vex was planning to support Earth's full membership in the Galactic Alliance. Thax announced, "Our investigation found drafts of a speech he would have given the next day, a speech that would have greatly increased human influence in galactic politics." The family members' crystals chimed in discord. "That's impossible," one protested. He opposed human involvement in galactic affairs. Publicly, yes, Thax agreed. But privately, he had discovered something that changed his mind. He projected another document. His personal research showed that humans might be the key to colonizing Category 4 and 5 worlds, worlds that hold resources our civilization desperately needs. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Thax continued, his hover chair moving closer to the family representatives. "You couldn't let that happen," he said. "Your mining monopoly on marginally habitable worlds would have ended. So you arranged an accident, blamed it on human ignorance of your species' fragility. But you made one critical mistake." "What mistake?" a family member asked, their crystal structure nearly transparent with fear. "You chose Nexus 9 as his punishment," Thax replied. "A world so deadly it would ensure no one questioned your story. Instead, it proved everything Lord Vex had discovered about humans. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, secret messages, and finally, a confession from Lord Vex's assistant. The truth emerged like a star-going supernova, impossible to hide, impossible to deny." Meanwhile, on Nexus 9, James was teaching his spine stalker pack a new hunting technique when he saw something in the orange sky, a ship breaking through the clouds. Not a drone this time, but a real rescue vessel. As the ship landed, James stood his ground, his pack arranged protectively around him. The ship's door opened, and to his surprise, Keeper Mar stepped out, wearing a heavy environment suit. "You lasted more than 20 hours, Mar called out, his voice filled with pride. "In fact, you've lasted longer than anyone in galactic history." "The truth?" James asked simply. Mar nodded. "Found. All of it. The Council is waiting to apologize, and to learn. It seems humans have much to teach us about survival." James looked at his pack, his cave home, the world that was supposed to kill him. "We'll teach you," he said. "But first, there are some people I need to face." The story of his survival had shattered more than just survival records. It had shattered the galaxy's understanding of what was possible and what humans could truly achieve.